Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts,
Uh,
and
it, it, excuse me, sir. Can you please pass the mic? Because I am the guest host for tonight, and my
oh,
name is Kim Davis, and I will be the guest host, putting our friend in the hot seat. Let's ask him a couple of questions. So I would like to welcome everyone to the Blessing in the Street podcast. And tonight's guest is the author of Blessing in the Street, Joe Roberts. Let's give him a round of applause.
all right,
And
all right.
uh, ladies, and welcome to the podcast in the hot seat. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce Joseph B. Roberts, my friend that turned into my brother, whom I've known since 2013. He's a great husband, an awesome father, and most importantly, he's a God fearing man. Please welcome him to the podcast and let's dive into his life a little bit and see how we got to know him this far. And I really appreciate, please welcome Joseph Roberts, my forever friend.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. This should be an interesting evening tonight with me being in the hot seat, passing the mic to you,
I
my host for the evening. I don't normally, obviously, get a chance to do this role reversal, if you will, but I understand that it's not always easy sitting in this hot seat. So, hey, sometimes you gotta kind of step back and be transparent yourself and share a little bit of your story. So that's what I'm doing tonight, audience. So I'm turning the keys over, turning the mic over to Kim, and I've been hijacked. My show has been hijacked for this evening. So
appreciate
whatever Kim asks me, I'm prepared to answer those questions to the best of my ability. So
Okay.
the show is yours, Kim. What you got for me?
Okay, so can we start out just getting to know you a little bit better? I know you as my friend, as my brother, as a co-worker, as a God-fearing man, and like I stated earlier, awesome husband and father. Can you give our audience a little bit, tell us a little bit about you, about Joseph B. Roberts?
Okay, okay. Well, again, Joseph B. Roberts. I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. So Chi-Town in the building. For me, and born, single parent household. Lived in Chicago into my mid 20s, and then my when my mom got married, she also got a new job that was going to be located in Indianapolis, and so she had plans on relocating to take on a new job and start her new life. And at the time, I decided to follow suit and packed my bags too and went to Indianapolis as well, where I would live for the next 17 and a half years. And that is actually where I had the pleasure of meeting my wife in Indianapolis. And of course, that's where my daughter was born in Indianapolis. And sometime after that, some years later, after being married and everything, I got a promotion opportunity here in the Dallas area. So I took a leap of faith. Me and the family packed up, moved our way to Dallas, Texas, where we have been, as Kim stated, since 2013, and that was where I had the opportunity to actually meet Kim. At the time, we were working together at the time, and she was one of the very first people that I had a chance to meet, and we instantly connected, like as if we'd known each other for years, and we've been tight like that ever since.
Yes.
And so, as Kim stated, obviously under normal circumstances, I'm host of the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I'm also an author of the Blessings in the Streets book, which is where the podcast is kind of an extension of. Um, Father, my daughter is 16 years old, been married now for 20 years, and I'm a deacon in my church, and just living life these days, trying to continue my path and building a closer relationship with God, and truly embracing the purpose that He has for me in life. It's been an awesome season of time that I've been in for some time now, and I'm just letting God reveal to me what it is that He would have for me to do, and just trying to walk into that. And it's kind of one of those things that's both exciting and at the same time a little scary.
Mhm.
At the same time, but it's what it is. It's what God has for me, and I'm just keeping myself, my mind, and my heart open to what He has for me, and just really trying to tap into not only walking in obedience, but of course also in faith, and knowing that God has something special in store for me. That not only did I not that I not only believe will be a blessing for me and my family, but more importantly, positions me to be able to bless others. So that's a little snapshot of me and who I
Okay,
am.
you said something earlier about when you moved from Indianapolis to Dallas, you took
Mhm.
a leap of faith.
Yes.
With the leap of faith, what was that transition like for you and your family? Getting here, you really didn't have any family here. I mean, you just uprooted and came to a whole new city that you'd never been to. What was that like?
Um, for me, it was really a big deal because I had never made that type of major decision. And more importantly, it was sort of a entering into a whole new phase of life. My mom passed away in 2011. And she was really, in all honesty, the last thing that was holding me to Indianapolis. Admittedly, I was actually in many ways used her as a crutch, if you will, as to
Mm-hmm.
why I couldn't leave. It was always, I can't leave my mom. I can't, let her be by herself. And my mom had on multiple occasions, um, you know, tried to encourage me to seek out other opportunities, and I just wouldn't do it. And so oftentimes I tell people, that while losing my mom was one of the most, it, definitely at the top of the list of the most devastating things that I've ever gone through. It was also one of the greatest blessings that I ever experienced, because it was God's way of saying to me, while I know that this hurts, that your mom is no longer with you, um, she's done her work has been done. She's done the part that she was supposed to do in raising you, and I have some assignments for you, and these assignments are going to require you to go into a foreign land, if you will, a place that you don't really know anybody. There's no way that you can predict how this is all going to play out. My job offering at the time was not a guaranteed permanent job offering. It was something that had the possibility of becoming permanent. So I literally uprooted my family. My daughter was, in preschool at the time, and just even transitioning to Dallas. I mean, my wife decided to step down from working for a while just to help our daughter adjust. So we're moving to a new place. We're going down to one income, uh, not having any idea how this thing is going to play out. And it was literally a test of faith to just trust God that He wouldn't have opened up this opportunity for me to come to this, foreign place, if you will, and trust Him to that everything that we were giving up, walking away from, and all the unknowns, that as long as I was trusting in His guidance and direction, that everything was going to be okay. So it was a very surreal experience, but it was definitely one of the best decisions that I ever made. And
Mm-hmm.
um and I have no regrets. If I had an opportunity to replay it and do it all over again, I certainly would. It was just time,
Yeah.
and again, it was God trying to, again, set up that next stage, if you will, of where He was taking me to get to be prepared,
Mhm.
to start the preparation process, or I should say, even continue the preparation process for the purpose that He was lining up for me. So,
The beauty in that is not only did you take the leap of faith, uh, the trust that you had for the Lord, making that move.
mhm,
Like you said, you came to a foreign land, you know. where you didn't have, this, as you will, a crutch.
Hmm.
So you had to stand on everything, all your faith. So I think that's a testimony in itself for someone who's struggling at this time to make a decision or afraid to take that leap of faith, knowing that it's time. The only thing about it is if we don't take the leap of faith when it's time, he's going to definitely push us. So I
Hmm.
really appreciate you sharing that with us.
Absolutely.
So why don't you just try to, I mean, try, no, why don't you just, kind of explain to us what was it like growing up? You said from Chicago, I
Hmm.
went Indiana. So how was it like in Chicago for you growing up there?
Okay. Like I said, I came up in Chicago, single parent household. We, lived on the south side of Chicago. For those who might be tuning in and familiar with that area of town, Chicago is a very segregated city. So you pretty much know where everybody is. And South Side has traditionally been the part of the city. South Side and West Side has been traditionally part of the city where that's pretty much where you're going to see black people living at. Our neighborhood was, I would say, a working class neighborhood. Um, Not, it wasn't super fancy, but it wasn't run down. We did have the elements in the neighborhood that are traditional for inner city. So there were gangs, there were, you know, drugs, there was, you know, all kind of mayhem that you can get into if that was the direction that you were trying to go down. It was there for you to tap into. But one thing that I do remember is that, coming up at that time, coming up in the 70s, you still had that sense of community at the
Hmm.
time. So, it wasn't unusual for other people to know you, parents in particular, who, if you were caught doing stuff that you didn't have no business doing, they
Yeah,
kind of had an unofficial authority to check you on that, and then you might get checked later when your actual parent gets home.
exactly.
Like I said, we didn't have a lot of money, and I think again from those times, and sometimes this has come up from time to time when I've had other guests on the show who've had similar experiences where it was like it was a time where you didn't have a lot, but you didn't really know that you didn't have a lot
That's right.
because of
Same
the
here.
closeness of the family. So I mean, we lived in a small apartment. When I think back, even right now, as I reflect back on what our apartment looked like, it was a 2 bedroom apartment. It was me, my mom, and my grandmother who lived together. So probably until I was 12, 13 years old, my mother and I shared a room. Literally, I had a bed on one side of the room that was mine, and she had hers on the other side. We shared closet, dresser, everything. I mean, my grandmother had her own room. It was a little tiny apartment, but we still did the basic things of that you would expect from family. So it wasn't unusual for us to have, if you think about a movie like Soul Food, it
Hmm.
wasn't unusual for us on every Sunday to have a formal type of Sunday meal. You sat down at the table and ate together. You know, it was still during that time of life where kids were outside playing. You don't really see that like
Yes,
you used to anymore, but you know,
definitely.
you were trying to run the streets and be out there and playing. We had a park around the corner, so the park would stay full with kids. And I, I've never been athletic per se, but a sport that I enjoyed coming up as a kid was my love was for baseball, and and at that time that was just as popular as playing basketball was back then. And so a lot of us be out in the park playing baseball, just running around or riding our bikes, things of that nature. So it was cool. And even when you think about the people who were maybe doing things that aren't necessarily the proper things to
To
do,
do,
the
yeah.
the the code of conduct was different.
Yes,
So, you could see let's just say the neighborhood drug dealer or gangbanger or whatever. But a lot of times, if they knew that you were a kid who, whether they knew your parents or they knew you were a kid that kind of had your head on straight, they didn't have a problem with, kind of talking to you and maybe driving home the importance about, hey, you need to stay out of trouble. You need to, stay in school, or the neighborhood, alcoholic telling you about, don't be out here doing this, that, or the other. It was just again, that's just that whole community effect. And then one of the things, and I had this conversation before with a good friend of mine that I grew up with. Um, Literally a couple of blocks away is where we had like a whole block of businesses, and it didn't click into me at the time, but as I reflect back on it now, what was amazing is that many of those businesses that were literally just a couple of blocks away from where I lived, that whole strip, most of those businesses were black owned. And
Yeah.
so, we had, a shoe repair place, a grocery store, a couple of little, snack shops, barbershop, beauty shop. There was even a club,
Yeah.
on that whole strip, things that now, if you were to try to purchase a house in a neighborhood that had a strip like that of businesses in that locale, you pay premium dollars for that. But to just think about that, that was like, even in my humble, coming up, that there
Mhm.
were black business owners that close to me, and that was a normal, regular thing in the neighborhood. And to see us,
Mhm.
being entrepreneurs and running businesses, that was really impactful. That now that I think about it, all this time later, but overall, great childhood. I mean, yes, did I have some friends that kind of strayed the path a bit?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I did,
Yeah.
and in fact, one of my best friends, childhood friends, got caught up, and at 17, he was killed in a drive-by sitting in front of his house. Um, you know, uh, so I witnessed that, those type of things happening, or having friends that, I grew up with that unfortunately didn't finish school and end
Yeah.
up getting locked up and things of that nature. So, but, my mom being a single parent, she did the best that she could. I can't tell you about a time where I went without food
Mm.
or clothes on my back or anything of that nature. Again, it was one of those situations where I knew we didn't have a lot, but I didn't miss out on anything either per se.
Mhm.
And so having that love, having that support, was huge, and I'll be forever grateful for that. And between and of course, church of course was a big deal.
Yeah.
For as far back as I can remember. So that was a regular every Sunday thing. You were going to church,
Mhm.
and back then you didn't go to. Not only did you go to church, but you went to church looking like you were at somebody's church. So you were,
Yes.
we all had our suits on and everything. Now I know church has gotten a little bit more casual, where you know you don't see that as much, but that was a thing. Suited and booted. You had, like, I joke about that sometimes. Like, when back in the day, you only had three types of clothes. You had school clothes, church clothes, and play clothes.
Yes.
And so you had your church clothes on Sunday, and several of my friends that went to the church were also friends that I went to school with, because at the time I grew up Catholic,
Mhm.
and so our church was connected to the school. And so many of my friends that I saw at church, I saw them at school. I went through the whole thing of, as I got older, being an altar boy, and all that kind of stuff. So it was overall, and being in Cub Scouts. My mom was a den mother,
Mhm.
and most of her, oddly enough, some of her closest friends that were also den mothers, they all had sons. And
Oh, wow.
so it was, so she was always a lover of boys in particular. So, our moms were like interchangeably each other's moms, and they just kind of
Yeah.
looked out for us over the years. And as boys, we just kind of, my mom just didn't have friends that had daughters. They just all had boys. And we were
Oh,
all around the same age within a
yeah.
year or two of each other. So it was just a thing that we grew up doing. So,
Mhm.
so it's just overall just really memorable childhood, close relationship with my grandmother as
Mhm.
well. So we play games all the time. My grandmother was the first one who taught me how to play blackjack and other board games. I mean, we would sometimes we playing blackjack, and we'd be sitting at the table. We had a big jar of pennies, and
Yeah.
that's what we would use to bet where we playing cards and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
it's just a very wholesome growing up environment, and can't really complain. Lots of fond memories, but most importantly, just having the love and support of my mom and my
And
grandmother.
that's what it sounds like. Your
Yeah.
mom was very active in your childhood, and your well-being to make sure you stayed on the straight and narrow. Now, I would like to ask this question. You know, with the father not around and your mom raising you, how did you avoid the gang activity? You know, I hear you. I heard when you said about some of the, you know, the drug dealers were talking to the kids that had their head on straight. You know, and even the neighborhood that I grew up in, uh, they were very protective of the ones, like you said, that had their head on straight. So, how did you avoid the gang activity? Because, you know, from what I understand, it's gang is everywhere, but I heard it was really heavy in Chicago. So, how did
Hmm.
you avoid that?
Really, a lot of that had to do with my mom and my grandmother. They set boundaries. I'm from the era of the street lights.
Mm-hmm.
And so, back in the day when the things that you didn't have any business doing, whether it was that gang life, drug dealing life, and all that kind of stuff, those things typically happened in the evening hours. And
Yeah.
so it was one of those things. And I guess that's ultimately in part, when you think about the whole street light rule, when them street lights come on, you better be heading to the house. I think the mindset was if you are a kid and you're getting in the house at a decent hour, particularly when these street lights come on before the evening starts to settle, the sun starts to set, and the real foolishness starts to kick off, you're already in the house. My mom also was very specific as far as my boundaries that I could go. So like I could literally only go 5 blocks in each direction from where
Yeah.
I lived. So I
Mm-hmm.
had a perimeter that I had to stay in. And it was so funny. One thing that comes to mind is like, like I told you, we would, as kids, we would play in the park, and it was a huge park. And sometimes we might be on the far end of the park, on the opposite side of the park. So you're talking about, in terms of distance, you might be talking about a good 3 blocks away. And you got all these kids yelling and screaming out in the park and all of that going on. And there'll be times where we'd be out there playing, and then all of a sudden I would stop.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, and my friend will be like, what's wrong? And I'll be like, my grandmother just called me. And they'd be like, we didn't hear nothing. And
Wow.
then I'd pause. There it is again. I said, I gotta go. And so like I said, we lived in a 3 flat apartment building. So we were on the second floor, and my grandmother used to lean over the banister and she would yell my name, she'd call me by my nickname. She'd yell my name, and literally I could hear her voice. Like it was almost like, we talk about dogs get good hearing. I could hear my
Yes.
grandmother's voice 3 blocks away in a park full of kids running and screaming all over the place and yelling. And by the time I ran home, she'd be leaning over. I know I wasn't gonna have to call you a third time, not knowing I done had to run multiple blocks. But the fact that I was able to hear her
That's
in the midst of all of that noise, or recognize my mom pulling around the corner and see her car pull up, she looking for me. Not
yeah.
because I was in trouble or anything like that, but it was about
Mm-hmm.
not so much trying to protect you in the sense where you were smothered, but again setting parameters, setting boundaries. And anytime my friends approached that boundary, like sometimes they wanted to ride their bikes a little bit farther, I'd have to stop. And it
Yeah.
just became a thing that I did. Like, nope, that's my limit, I can't go past here.
Yeah.
And
Same
it
for
was just something that I got used to.
yeah. It's the same
To,
thing growing up as well. Yes.
yeah, so
Just want to make sure we're safe and we're within, like you said, the perimeters, and they had boundaries set for us, even curfews. You know, like you
hmm
said, the porch light. Yeah, I remember when I mean the street lights when the street light come on. I remember, you know, you start seeing that light flicker. It's time to go.
you
You
better
know,
you better start walking.
yes, to make it to the house. That's good. That's good. So, can you tell us about a time when you faced a challenging life situation that had worries, fears, or doubts, and how did you overcome it?
Um, Actually, two things come to mind. It's
Mhm.
and they kind of follow one another. A little lengthy story, but nevertheless, the first thing that comes to mind in terms of time where I felt it was a really challenging moment for me at, with respect to dealing with the adversities of it all. I reflect back into my 20s.
Mhm.
And specifically, when I think about from the age of 22 to the age of 29, that 7 year period was a very roller coaster ride type moment for me, and so on so many levels. And at the time, I didn't understand why I was going through what I was going through. As I reflect back on it today, it all makes sense. But at the time, it really didn't. So, just to kind of give you some perspective of what that 7 year period was like for me, at the start of it, at age 22, I'm at a time period in my life where I'm graduating from college. And, this is supposed to be an exciting time for me. Uh, it's a big accomplishment, and I'm excited about the future and everything like that. But as wonderful and as awesome as a time period as that was for me, my goal at the time was I wanted in graduating from college, my initial plan was to go to law school.
Mhm.
And but all of the law schools that I had applied for leading up to my graduation, I did not get accepted in any of them. And that was kind of a shock to me because, my scores were decent, my grades were decent. And while I did have some schools on the list that I knew were long shots, I also had some schools that were supposed to be sort of I know I'm going to get into these, even if I don't get into nothing else. And it was just, I was getting shut down. So it was like my only backup plan at the time was for graduate school, which I had gotten accepted in the graduate school at the time that I had applied for, which was at University of Iowa. But it was my plan B. I really wanted to go to law school. So for me to have done all that work in preparation and thinking that I was going to go off to law school and yet not be able to get accepted was a bit crushing for me.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know how to process that. Now I would find out later on that a big reason why I wasn't getting the responses that I thought that I thought I should have gotten was that in that particular year that I was applying for law school, there was an uptick in applicants for law school that year, a
Mm.
significant one. I don't know necessarily what triggered it, but a lot of kids wanted to go to law school that year. And
Mhm.
so it made the competition significantly more competitive. And that's what played a major role in my not being able to get in that particular year. So, I dealt with that. And then here I was, I fast forward a couple of years later, having law school now being out of the picture. And of course, I even passed up on University of Iowa because to my surprise, I ended up shifting gears and getting accepted into graduate school at Northwestern.
Mhm.
And I actually talk about that in my book as far as what that experience was like for me. But it was something that was a total shocker. But at the same time, I'm thinking this is a game changing moment because I'm at an elite university getting my master's degree. Here I am again, another milestone is about to be on for me. Um, but yet, here I now was having finished grad school, master's degree, two bachelor's degree in hand, but I'm out here in the real world, if you will, applying for jobs, and it's a rejection after another, after
Mhm.
another, after another. So now here I am again, like you've invested all this time, all this effort, all this money to go to school, and nobody's wanting to hire you. So now you find yourself, which a lot, and this is how, and I know this has happened to a lot of kids who've gone to
Yeah.
school, and you get to questioning like, well, what did I go through all of that for if it's not getting me any opportunities? And so that was really frustrating, and that would go on for well over a year. I mean, because I graduated in '94,
Mm.
and from grad school, and then in '95 is when we relocated to Indianapolis. And so, of course, initially when Indianapolis came into the picture, I'm thinking, you know, Indianapolis is a major city, but it's not big like Chicago. So I'm thinking, hey, I'll get in Indianapolis, and they'll somehow be impressed with my resume and what I got to offer. But the trend was continuing. No, rejection, rejection, rejection. And I'm working odd and end temp jobs just to pay, the rent from my apartment that I had, borrowing money from my parents, just to survive, just to stay afloat. And it was just, you're really feeling, at that time, I'm really feeling down about all of this. Like, where am I going to go? And it got to the point to where I got so desperate to have some steady income that here I found myself at 25 years old working at a gas station, as a cashier, talking about, what pump you on, soft pack, hard pack, cleaning gas. I mean, at one point I was working at two gas stations
Yeah.
where I was literally in the daytime working for one gas station from like 6 to 2.
Mm-hmm.
Like say it was like a 6 to 2, 6 to 2:30 shift. I would literally go into the bathroom, change out of that uniform, and change into the other gas station uniform, where I had to drive to and work that shift from 3 to 11. So I'm
Wow.
working minimum wage type jobs, sitting on 3 degrees, and I'm like, what? This is not making sense.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm battling with that, and then also in the midst of this period in '95, a few months after we moved to Indianapolis, my grandmother passed because she relocated with us. But at the
Mm-hmm.
time, her health was failing, and I literally was the last one who saw her alive. She was supposed to be coming home for Thanksgiving. She was staying at a nursing facility at the time, and I went to visit her like on that Friday or Saturday, and she passed that a couple of days. That Sunday evening is when she passed away. And I remember when I saw her, she was just crying, and she just kept telling me that she was tired. She was tired, and I didn't really know what she was going with that, but I was trying to boost up her her mindset and her feelings and everything. Like, hey, you're gonna see everybody. Thanksgiving is coming up. It's gonna be a good time and all of that.
Yeah.
And again, that was something I actually, in the book, for those, if you don't have the book, I actually talk about how I found out about my grandmother's passing in the book. A very interesting story to
Yes.
that. But nevertheless, my grandmother and I were extremely close. So at that time of her passing, that was at that particular date and time in life, that was the most devastating death that I had experienced at that point in life. So grandmother's gone, my money ain't right because I got all these degrees and I can't get steady employment, that's in alignment with what I went to school for. And then there was the relationship front. Over that 7 year period, I had a total of, in between, just, being a single guy out here doing this thing, I had three long term relationships that I would encounter over that 7 year time frame.
Mm-hmm.
And in each one of them, I thought I had found the one,
One.
and it didn't work out. So now I'm like, okay, I can't get the love life right. I can't get the money right. Somebody, the closest person to me, is gone, and my grandmother, and I'm just kind of questioning, who I am as a man in terms of my ability to stand on my own 2 feet and just and do the life that I thought I was supposed to be set up, to do. I mean, this was all the stuff that I'd been, had embedded in my mind ever since I was a kid. You do well in school, you go to college, you get your degrees, you get a career, you make a life for yourself, and you live happily ever after. And that wasn't happening for me. And
Right.
so now here I am at 29 years old, and I finally, for the first time, land a job that has some level of steadiness to it and pays halfway decent, but it still wasn't a job that I ever imagined that I would be in. And so now I'm working in the car business,
Yeah.
and I'm a finance manager at the time, which um, you know for somebody my age, that was unusual. At that time I was probably the youngest, what they call a F&I manager or finance manager. I was probably the, if not the youngest, one of the youngest in the entire state doing
Huh.
that, because that wasn't traditionally a job that you do at that age. But
Mm-hmm.
nevertheless, I've always had a love for cars. And so it just ended up being a natural fit. And I'm making money for the first time, and things are rolling along, in terms of the dollars now. But I'm still trying to, still kind of figure things out because, this can't be what I went. I didn't go to school to go into the car business,
Right.
to be the traditional car salesman or what have you. So I just got out of the third long term relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm at the dealership one day, and my salesman. at the dealership, they kind of knew that I was, a little girl crazy, if you will. And so one of the things that they would do is anytime that they saw a female customer come into the dealership that they thought fit the type of woman that they thought I would be attracted to, they
Mhm.
would always personally introduce her to me. They walk her into my office and introduce her to me. This is our finance manager. I want you to personally meet him. Da 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 da. Thinking that if they did that and they got it right, that I would work extra hard on that deal.
Yeah.
And truth be told, I did. And so one day they bring a young lady into the office, and of course, and she got my attention. And so I worked real hard to try to get her approved on the vehicle that she had interest in, and I got her approved on it, but it was going to be a little bit more expensive than what she was able to afford. So she's about to basically walk out the door. And so my manager was like, hey, we got another car in. I think that she might be interested in that may work a little bit better. So we showed her the car. She loved it. I got the deal done. She's about to roll up out of there in her new car. So before she leaves, clearly there's an attraction there. And so I say to her, I'm like, it looks like I guess this is gonna be the last time I get a chance to see you you
Oh,
know and
and
so she's like, well, it doesn't have to be like that. She's like, it's not like you don't have all my information. She said, you got my phone number, my address, my social security number,
oh.
everything about me. So I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess you're correct. So I of course I called her up, and we chatted a couple of times, over the phone. And then like about a day or two later, she comes by the dealership by unexpectedly, and she has some food with her. And she was like, I figured you might be hungry. I made you a little something for dinner. I'm like, okay, she's checking off all of the right things. She's tapping into me the right way. So we're
Mhm.
sitting in my office and I'm eating, and we're just kind of having small talk. And she says to me, well, she asked me the question, uh, do you have a church home? And I explained to her, I said, well, technically I have a church home back in Chicago. I said, but since I had relocated to Indianapolis, I hadn't really connected with a specific church here. And quite honestly, I hadn't really been actively engaged in church since I went off to college. It was like everything that I had grown up knowing and been accustomed to. I got on the college campus, and between school and losing my mind with the freedom,
Yeah.
church was not a
On
priority on my
it.
mind. So I literally had been kind of separated, if you will, from church at
Mhm.
this point for about 10 years.
Yes.
It wasn't that I didn't believe in God anymore or anything like that, but as far as actively being involved in church or really having conversations with God on a regular, that just wasn't happening. It wasn't a priority for me. So she brings this up. I tell her kind of my little backdrop on that, and she says to me, "I would like to invite you to come to church with me this Sunday." So there was a part of me that was like saying, "You know what, you need to go because it's been a minute." And then
Mhm.
there was a part of me that I'm kicking myself because I'm like, you done messed around and met a church girl. And, so, in my flesh, I'm thinking, ain't nothing popping off here because she's in
Yes.
church, so whatever plans you thought you had, this is not going to work.
Right.
So, but I said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and go. I said, I need to go. Let's see how this plays out. So we go to church that Sunday. Um, this was actually a Church of Christ. That first time I'd ever been to a Church of Christ.
Yes.
And they didn't have their own facility at the time. They were renting out a space at like a hall that they were using for church service, and people were very friendly and everything, welcoming me. So I'm feeling the initial feeling comfortable. So we get church gets to starting, and and they're in praise and worship. So the first song is played, and I'm kind of, standing up there, clapping my hands, bopping along to it. Like, okay, this is nice. This feels good. And so then the second song that they started to sing, I don't know if you're familiar with this, is Trouble in My Way.
Yes.
So, the guy
Yes.
starts singing, he's like, Trouble in my way. I gotta cry sometime. So I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm clapping, but what I'm noticing as I'm standing there praising and worshiping with everybody else is that all of a sudden my eyes are starting to well up.
Yep.
And so I'm standing there and you know how you get when your eyes start well up and you start to buck your eyes wide because you don't want anything
The
to fall out of them.
flow.
And this
Yes.
was this was weird for me because I've never been in church and got emotional in any kind of way.
Yes.
So, and as the guy is singing, the choir singing along, and they get into the second round and the third. By the time they get to the third round, trouble in my way, I'm uncontrollably crying.
Yes.
I'm just uncontrollably. I'm just a hot mess,
Mm.
and I'm not understanding what's happening. But
Yeah.
it was a situation where God took my one of my weakest areas in life, which was women at the
Me.
time, and he used one of my greatest weaknesses to bring me back to him.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was sharing with you earlier about why I was going through this whole 7 year period, as I reflect many years later, this was God trying to bring me closer to him. He had to let me go through that because I was trying to just do life on my own
Yes.
terms and in my own way.
Mm-hmm.
And so he let me go through this 7 year period of that. And, to the point to where he finally brings me in. And so we get to the part of the church service where the pastor, how they ask, we got any guests with us today? And so I'm the only one who raised my hand. I'm the guest. And
Oh,
so he
you
asked
got
me to,
special attention.
yes. So he asked me who brought me, and I pointed to the young lady that I was with. He was like, "Oh, okay." He's like, "Come on up to the front." So I'm like, "Ah." So I come up to the front, and he asked me my name and everything. And then he asked me what did I do for a living? And I
Mm-hmm.
said, "Well, I'm a finance manager." He was like, "Oh my God." He was like, "I have been praying for somebody to come to our church that was solid with finances. This has been on my heart lately." And he
Wow.
said, "So it's just really interesting that you're here today." So then he said, so he pointed to the back. He said, you see the gentleman in the back of the room? And this gentleman in the back of the room was an associate. He was the associate pastor. He said, "I want you to go back to there and I want you to talk to him." So I'm like, okay. I didn't know really what he wanted me to go talk to him about, but he sent me back there. So I go meet this gentleman, this associate pastor, who, by the way, I'm still friends with to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Went back there and he starts to ask me about basically, do I believe, do I believe in the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ? He's asking me, our key questions to that, and I was like, I do believe in Christ. I know it's been a while since I've been in church, but I know I need to be back. I've never officially given my life to Christ, and he and I have a brief conversation, and the next thing I know, he's walking me up to the front. And he walks me up to the front, and the pastor asked me, he asked me the sinner's prayer. Hey, do you believe in the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ? Do you accept him as your Lord and Savior? And I said yes. And so that would end my first date with this young lady would
Wow.
end up being the day that I became saved. And I got baptized later that day and everything. And it was just a surreal feeling to go through that experience. So I say all that to say, and my apologies, it was kind of a lengthy story, but I had to give the backdrop to that because I
Yeah.
went through this 7 year period of things the money wasn't working right, relationships weren't working right, everything just seemed that I lost loved ones. Everything just wasn't. I just wasn't feeling complete. I wasn't feeling whole. And God used that dark period of my life to ultimately lead me back to him using the thing that was one of my greatest weaknesses points, if you will, and led me back to him. And here I am all of these years later. This was back in, March 14th, 1999, gave my life to Christ. And so here I am 25 years later, you know, um, you know, in relationship with God, never imagined the impact that would have on my life. And it was just such a powerful experience for me to go through. And that was sort of my, again, if you want to talk about a light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, at that particular point in time, because once I made that commitment, things started to There were some
Change.
things that started to change, but it was it. And when I say things started to change, which kind of leads me to the second part of the of what I was sharing here, is that it wasn't that all of a sudden everything started to work out right.
Mhm.
In fact, I would go through another season of rough patches, but it was the way I approached. My mindset started to change as
Was
to how I
different.
received
Yeah.
it. That's
Yeah.
what the change was. And so for anybody that's tuning in, it's like understand that even if you make a big decision, and this is definitely a big decision, one of the best decisions that you'll ever make is to give your life to Christ. There's
Amen.
no guarantee that you all of a sudden go through a time where everything is perfect and flawless and there's no challenges or worries, because that wasn't the case for me.
Yeah.
um and that kind of leads me to the back end of the story, which is I got saved, wonderful opportunity, but on the back end of the story, what would happen in the months to follow is that the young lady that I ended up quote unquote being invited to church to, and that led me to being saved, uh 3 months later, she and I got married.
Wow.
um and and I never expected, I never saw that coming. But unfortunately, we, in spite of the fact that we got married, the marriage didn't work out. It was one of those things where God didn't he didn't introduce me to the young lady for the purposes of me getting married. He introduced me to the young lady for
To
bringing
bring
me back to him.
it. Mm-hmm.
I took it upon myself to go into that direction. Got cues. Both of us did got cues before the wedding was to even take place that this wasn't the right decision to make, but my pride got in the way. And because invitations were already out and things of that nature, I kind of downplayed it as being, oh, it's just nervous jitters,
Yeah.
things like that. But God was giving clear messages that this wasn't supposed to be what I did. But because I was insisting on doing it,
Mm-hmm.
he allowed it to play itself out. And so, literally, between um, getting married, 2 months later, being separated, and by the 9 month mark, being divorced, it was like a front to back that swiftly. And so again, here I was facing a relationship plateau, in this case at the highest level in a marriage, and it's already over. I always thought I would get married someday, but I never imagined it being ending, and definitely not ending so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not, and I'm not here to put down my now ex, or anything like that. It was just, it wasn't supposed to be. I forced something outside of what God's will was, and again, that was my first example of, a reminder again that even though I had given my life to Christ, that you got to understand that the storms are going to still come, but you got to
Yeah.
follow God's lead. You got to follow his direction. So, here I had a failed marriage already within the first year of being saved. I had gotten a promotion on the job at another dealership that was paying twice as much money. But then that scenario, when I got over there, that job didn't work out. So I ended up losing that job. So now my financial issues were back at me again. Um, but the blessing was, is initially the blessing was, is that the church offered me an opportunity to work there. Remember, as I told you, the
Yeah.
pastor at said he was looking for somebody
And the
in
finance.
the finance realm, and the church was struggling at the time in terms of how to properly manage the finances and just dealing with a lot of debt and things like that. So I stepped into that role, and I was able to immediately be able to pull some things together and get the church back on track
Mm-hmm.
financially. I mean, I was literally, even at that early stage of my giving my life to Christ, I was literally like second in line in terms of, in leadership, just because of the nature of the job that I was doing. So when you work in that type of position, you get to see some things that the average church member doesn't get a chance to see.
Mm-hmm.
And, for me, that would end up being a roller coaster ride yet again, because here I was getting tested in the sense that I'd given my life to Christ. I'm working at a church. What better place could you be working at? But I was seeing some things behind the scene in terms of the money that was, for lack of a better word, was a little disturbing.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was directly connected to the pastor that I was under at the time, in terms of how he handled money.
Mm-hmm.
That I soon discovered that a lot of the financial challenges that were going on at the time, he was
Causing him.
a big problem
Mm-hmm.
behind it. And so now I found myself in a situation where, I'm well liked in the church. I have influence, but I'm seeing some things that are not in order, that I know are not in order. And I'm wanting to say something, but I'm torn because I'm worried that if I say something, that it's not just about me sharing information with people that I feel, in membership that I feel like they should know, but I'm also torn with the idea of what happens if I say something and it actually ruins their relationship with God, where they just are off a church, not and off of God altogether. And so that would be a cycle of time that I would go through in experiencing that. And even when I talked to other leaders in the church at the time, a lot of them didn't really, they were hearing me, but they weren't really receiving what I had to say. So it was a very dark and lonely period. And ultimately, fast forwarding in that story, I ultimately made the decision to leave that particular church because it
Yes.
was more important for me to preserve, you know, the faith, that the faith walk, the relationship, if you will, that the other members had. I didn't want to be responsible for that. I had to come to a point in much prayer to God about it, is to say, you know what, God, you need to deal with this. It's not for me to step out and cause disruption or anything like that. So, but that was a rough period for me because it was affecting my ability to want to give. When I
Mhm.
saw how the money was placed, like, why would I give? I'm counting the money and
Yeah,
I'm
you
seeing
see?
where it's going. So I'm like, why would I give when I know where it's going? And I
Yeah.
know it's not going the way that it's supposed to be going. But it was a big important lesson for me because I learned at that stage in my life, I learned that when you give, I'm not supposed to give based upon what I think the pastor will or will not do with the money. I'm
Do.
supposed to
Yeah.
give because that's what God has called me to do, regardless of how, whether or not it gets distributed or handled a particular kind of way. And so it was important for me to witness that and see that. So again, it was another moment where I was allowed an opportunity to get perspective as to the I was still going through a storm, but the way I saw the storm,
Yeah.
the way I observed, the way I'm supposed to respond in those type of moments, it transformed me in a way. So God he was almost like he was sending me on an AP course on being in a relationship with him. It's like it was almost like he was telling me, Joe, you behind, and I
Yeah.
need you to get caught up. So I'm gonna let some stuff hit you
Yeah.
fast forward so you can get it, experience it, deal with it, and trust me to get you through it. And so that would be the cycle that I would go through in that on the back end of that.
There was something that you said that I like when uh you said when you accepted Christ in your life, and that doesn't mean that you're not going to go through. And I think that's very important for any of your listeners out there that are new in Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Because you made that decision, which is the best decision that you could have made for yourself. Just know that you still are going to have life challenges and um, things that you go through, and things that you have to endure in order to be stretched. And another thing you said that I wanted to point out is the fact that you said the mindset. You have a different mindset, and you see things differently. You clearly saw what was wrong. The challenge for you was, who do I communicate this to without disrupting somebody else's spiritual walk?
Mm-hmm.
So that was the challenge. But you remove yourself from that, because one thing you did say, yeah, he want us to give. It's not our business what they do with it, but we're being obedient about giving because God's going to deal with that. So we just have to stay obedient. And I think that's very important what you said for anybody that's listening to this episode, to know that life is still going to have challenges. You just have to have a different mindset and God's view on how to handle different situations. So I thought that
Mm-hmm.
was very important.
And one of the things that I appreciated about the pastor at the time, despite my differences of opinion about how he was handling certain things or what have you, was he used to say this from time to time in church that he would tell the congregation, "Please don't put all your trust and faith in me." He said, "Because I'll disappoint you."
Yeah.
And I thought it was kind of odd
Yes.
when he said it the first couple of times, but it began to make sense. It was
Yeah.
like he was trying to. It was his way of trying to say to us, "I'm still human, and I
Yeah.
still fall short." That doesn't excuse behaviors or practices that are not in
Mm.
alignment with God, but he's trying to remind us. Don't put all your faith in pastor, and I think that still applies to this day. You can love your pastor, you think your pastor's an awesome teacher and preacher, but at the same time, your pastor's still a human being.
Yes.
They still have challenges. They still have struggles. They have issues that they deal with, things that they're good at, things that they're always not so good at.
Yes.
They're human just like you. They deal with the same stresses, the same attacks that the
Yeah.
enemy has for us. He has for the past, especially in that role.
If
So,
not more. And yeah, I agree with you because our pastor say the same thing. Don't put me on a pedestal because I
mm-hmm,
disagree with you every time. You know,
mm-hmm,
because like you said, he's human, and that's true. That is so true.
yeah,
And sometimes we just have to look up, you
mm-hmm,
know, to get our help. And our pastors are the one to reinforce what we're learning, how we're growing, or whatever. But we're really to lean on the Lord. So
mm-hmm.
that was good, Joe. Thank you. So, when facing adversity, what process or routine works best for you in handling such situations?
Um, for me, it's kind of a multi-step way of how I handle it. I think the very first thing that I usually do when I'm facing a moment of adversity is that this is where I would say I have my human moment.
Yeah,
So, in other words, it's depending upon the situation, how it makes me feel. I allow myself to feel that way. So, if it saddens me, then I allow myself to be saddened by it, even if that means I got to shed a tear or two about it. If it angers me, if it frustrates me, if it whatever those human emotions are, and this is something that I talk about often, even on the show with other guests that I have on, is that you gotta still it. God is okay with you still being a human being, and how you deal and how you process what's going on. He understands that there are certain storms that will hit you in a way, whether it be by surprise or sometimes they're a little bit heavier than others or what have you. It just doesn't always set well for you. It makes you feel some kind of way. It's okay for you to process that. What's not okay is for you to stay stuck there.
that's right.
And so for me, I kind of deal with whatever the feeling is that I have for it. And that a lot of times that includes me talking it out. I will be the first one to admit that I have plenty of conversations with myself.
Same.
Some people might think that that's crazy. I talk to myself often, and
That's getting
sometimes I
expert advice.
right. Who?
Yeah,
Yes, exactly.
getting
So
expert advice.
yeah, I'll talk that thing out to myself and again allow those emotions to flow with it all. But then once I've kind of gotten it all out, um, then it's at that point that and again it kind of works both ways. Sometimes I might go immediately into to praying about it,
Mm,
asking God to give me some insight, some direction to work this thing out. And then sometimes because I've talked it out, sometimes God will, for me, sometimes He'll use my talking it out as if it's my prayer. And
yeah,
what I mean by that, like I'll be talking it out, talking it through, and then all of a sudden, in the midst of me talking to myself, I'll find myself talking out how I'm supposed to handle it, and I'll
yes,
catch myself like, did I just answer my own question? And it really wasn't that I answered it; it was God answered it, but He gave me the words to say to myself
mm-hmm.
as to what I need to do, which leads me to the back end of it of my process, which is now you got to actually do what
The
it
work.
is that
Mm-hmm.
he said to do. Now
Mm,
that, to be honest with you, that's the biggest challenge because you know we oftentimes will get into a situation, be facing a situation. Lord, please do this, that, or the other. I'm praying for you to make this happen, that happen. Tell me what to do. But then when he tells us what to do, because it doesn't, we'll have in our mind what we think the answer is supposed to be.
good. Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes God's answer to us is the complete total opposite of what we thought was supposed to be the answer. And sometimes when that happens, we find ourselves at times, I know I do, sometimes I'll get hesitant about taking the step forward. And that's where again, that faith and that obedience has to kick in, where you actually do what it is that God is asking you to do. And so, but for me, when I have followed that process where I've had my moment, I've prayed on it, and then I actually let God speak to me and tell me what to do, and I actually executed that, it always works out for me to be able to process through dealing with those adverse or challenging moments. Like I said, whether it's something really big and major, or if it's just day to day type life type stuff that we just deal with.
Yeah.
That tends to work best for me. Like I said, I just have to be very mindful. And again, this is just something that's a work in progress. I just
Mm-hmm.
have to be mindful that that once I've turned it over to God, and I incorporate this as part of my prayer every day, when I turn it over to God, that I acknowledge the fact that, okay, it's in His hands, and the worrying stops. The
Yes.
concern stops, because I'll find myself sometimes, especially when it's the stuff that's a little bit heavier, I'll find myself playing it out again. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a trick of the enemy, to have you play that stuff out over and over and over, keep revisiting it over and over and over again. And God is on the
It
side,
keeps you
on the
discouraged.
sidelines looking at you. Yeah. It keeps
Mm-hmm.
you discouraged. It keeps you
Discouraged.
down. It keeps you stressed out. And God is standing back looking at you like, didn't you already pray to me about this? Isn't
Mm-hmm.
my promise that anything that you turn over to me, that I got this, is handled? So then why you keep talking about it? Why you keep,
But
and sometimes I had to catch myself sometimes, because I have allowed myself from time to time, again, depending upon the situation, I've allowed myself to get caught up in that. And then I'll catch myself like, Lord, I'm sorry. I done got to rambling. I got to locking in on this. You got it. I just got to trust and follow your lead on this, and not get myself all worked up all over again. And the minute I catch myself, then that's when I feel that release come up off of
the
me, that
release.
negative energy. I refer to it in my prayers, that peace, joy, and calm that only God can offer. That when I tap into that,
Mm-hmm.
just when I got myself all worked up, whether it was worked up on a financial challenge, or worked up on a marriage challenge, or worked up on a work challenge, or whatever, when I come back to myself, it was like, okay, calm down, tap into that, and then all of a sudden it just kind of comes up off of me, and I'm like, okay, I'm good. That the anxious
See,
feelings go away, the stress go away, because I was getting myself worked up unnecessarily.
we
Because I
always get
keep,
ourselves worked up unnecessarily. And what you said was, we get ourselves worked up, and why you question this and that. When God have a track record with us, all we have to
right.
do is sit back and reflect and think about what He brought us through. Just what you said when you shared earlier about some of the things that you overcome that was challenging. The 7 years that you was going through with finances, when relationships, things were just coming at you, but He saw you through it. And so sometimes I think we just forget about His track record and what He
Mm-hmm.
does for us, and we
Yep.
and our anxiety get the best of us. And it was something you said earlier, because we want it how we want it. When it's God will, He already went before us. And He
Mm-hmm.
already know the outcome. We just don't. That's where our trust come in, and leaning on Him come in. That okay, I got this. I got you thus far. So what
Mm-hmm.
you worried about again?
Right. And that's what was so significant about what I shared with you earlier in my story, is like, God had to bring to my mindset, like, look, you out here chasing girls, and you need to be chasing me. You out here chasing money, and you need to be chasing me. You know, you
Yeah.
out here, you chasing everything else but me.
Mhm.
And so I had to let you chase for a while and see how that worked for you. And then when you get tired and you ready to get your mind right, come chase me, and
That's
and watch how everything plays out so differently when you chase me. Because it was because I chased him that I was ultimately able to break that relationship cycle and
mhm.
find myself in a healthy marriage. that
Mm-hmm.
I just recently celebrate 20 years in. It was because I stopped chasing,
Congratulations.
you
Yeah.
know, just chasing money, just be chasing money, that you now are on a path to, that you it ultimately get on a path of getting a job that is in alignment with what you need to learn and do, but even bigger than that, transitioning you into your purpose. So now
Yeah.
you chasing purpose instead of a paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
So the mindset is different. And you and I've had conversations even about that. Like,
Time.
there was a time where I just automatically assumed that my quote unquote work career would be a career that would end when you get 65 years old, and you put all these years in. And now, because of the mind shift change, you're starting to think, I don't even know if I'm gonna make it to 65. Not because I don't think I'm gonna be alive, not because I don't think I can do it, but I'm more concerned with purpose
Purpose.
now than I am with paycheck or status. I'm more concerned with the things that used to be important are not important
Wait
anymore.
for. I totally agree. Like you said, we've had those conversations, and when your mind set change and your uh, vision change, you're right. Things that we thought was important just isn't important anymore. It's our purpose and how can we serve.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have more peace and more joy now because it's a different type of peace that no one can give us but God, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they wonder why in the middle of chaos. And I've shared this with you. I know, we had situation at work, and I'd be like, Joe, how can you be so calm? You know, I'm
Mm-hmm.
about to break over here, but it's the peace that he gives you. And 9 times out of 10, a lot of people won't understand why you're so calm in the middle of chaos because you
Mm-hmm.
already know. So just know that's a different kind of peace, and I have experienced it, and I'm blessed to experience that. You're absolutely
Absolutely.
right on that. Okay, want to ask you if you could speak to the younger version of yourself. Uh, what advice would you give on how to handle adversity and become the best version of God intended for you to be? How talking to your younger self, the one that used to like chase women and things like that.
Yeah, for me, I think one of the things that I wish my younger self understood, was understood your worth, your value. Um,
Mhm.
know what you bring to the table,
That's good.
and not only know what you bring to the table, but own it, and don't be afraid to explore it. Um, there are things that I wish I would have done at a younger age, that I would, even if it didn't play out, I wish I would have experienced it, but I didn't experience it because of my fears.
Mm,
And the fear was more so about a fear of failure. I shared with you earlier about how I was never super athletic, but I really loved the sport of baseball when I was a kid. But and I had an opportunity to grow in that sport, but I was too scared to get on a team and make mistakes. Get on a little league team and make mistakes because I didn't want to be embarrassed. I didn't want to look bad. I didn't want to do that. There was a period of time I was always pretty solid in school, but from time to time I would get hit with some struggles academically. And it took me a long time to learn, and I even gotten on my daughter about this, um, to ask for help, because you didn't want to look like you didn't know. Well, you didn't know, but
that's
don't
true.
be ashamed to ask for help. If anything, you look silly not asking for help. When you don't know. Um, just having that confidence to just put yourself out there and unapologetically, that if you got an inkling of interest in something in life to do, if that's nudging at you, that's saying, try this. Put yourself out there and see how it works. Why not experience that? Why not go for that? I wish I would have done that earlier. And so for me to speak to my younger self, I would say, Joe, don't quit being scared. Put yourself out there. Let your light shine. um be the best version. Let you know, be willing to accept whatever bumps in the road that comes along the way. It's okay to make mistakes. It's an opportunity for you to grow, for you to be a better version of yourself. Quit trying to make everything perfect, or the setting to be perfect first before you go out there and do your thing. And that kind of goes back to, when we talk about what the relationship with God is about. It's
Mhm.
about you having faith and trusting
Mhm.
that, what we talk about, with faith, you're trusting in what you can't see. You have to just believe that it's going to make it, that it's going to be there, that it's going to happen. I just wish I would have done more of that early on, because I believe that, and I kind of alluded to this earlier. I feel like in life I'm doing a lot of catching up,
Really?
if you will. That there's some things that I probably should already be walking in and
Are you sure?
experiencing.
Because
That
think about it. God usually have us where we should be in that
true,
moment.
true.
Are you comparing it to society?
Well, let me put it like this. I think a better way for me to say it is that uh I probably, because I was trying to control the
There you
pathway, um there's some areas that I probably could have reached the blessing sooner, if you will, or maybe the
got
the, the pathway to the blessing
you.
wouldn't have had
Yes,
to been as rough if I was, instead of me trying to control it, let God control it.
I got
And so I guess
absolutely.
that's a better way for me to say that. And so so to my younger self is kind of like, what, you know, build that relationship with God early and let him lead you. Let him, show you your gifts and tap into those and just use them to the fullest. And make the most of it all. So that way, again, you can be the best version of who you are. I would also say to my younger self, quit trying to sacrifice your own happiness,
Mhm.
um, uh, to be a people pleaser for others. It's nothing wrong with you wanting things to go well or to be nice for other people, but way too often, over the course of my life, I allowed myself to put myself on hold, or to deny myself, um, for others, in situations that they didn't even appreciate the sacrifice that you would take on. I was guilty of taking on burdens and weights of others that didn't belong to me. It
Wow.
was it was okay for me to be empathetic to their situation. It might have even been okay for me to offer up some words of encouragement. But what it wasn't okay was for me to take on the burden, because
Exactly.
because that was, again, an example where I'm operating. I'm trying to be God. I'm trying to. Oh, my mom used to say to me, "You trying to be Captain Saver? You can't take on everybody's stuff. It's not for you to take. Sometimes all you're there to do is, again, maybe offer up some words of encouragement, be a listening ear.
Yeah.
Nobody told you to take on that stuff,
Yeah.
because if you've ever experienced what that feels like, there'll be people who, they see you willing to take it on, they'll give it to you,
They will,
and
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 they will sleep good at
they'll
night.
sleep good at night, and you'll be stressing and worrying about a problem that don't even belong to you.
You said something just a minute ago where you said sometimes all a person wants is empathy and to be a listener. But you know what, Joe? That goes a wrong way, and it
Mm-hmm.
does because sometimes they just have to get it off their chest and speak out to someone, and then the words of encouragement comes in because sometimes when they speak out and you've been a listener, they'll find out that you've probably been through a similar situation,
Mm-hmm.
and then they'll look at you and say, "Well, he made it through. That's hope. I can make it through too." So I agree with you saying it.
Yeah. So, that, and then again, just also, um I get just kind of tapping into what I just talked about being a people pleaser, because
Mhm.
sometimes in that people pleaser mode, and as much as I love my mom, love her to death. Anybody who knows what that relationship was, we were significantly super super close. But there were times when, whether it was my mom or whether it was other people that were in my close circle, that sometimes other people have what they think is best for you, what
Mm.
you should do, and you might feel pressure to again to do what they think is best for you, but it ain't really what you want to do. If that's not what because again, you're kind of people pleasing, and so to say to my younger self, if you know that that's not what you want to do,
No.
you appreciate the input. Thanks for that you think that this might be a good fit for me, but if that's not what God told me to do, or if that's not on my heart, if that's not on my spirit to do, then don't feel obligated to do that just to appease other people. And even if they get in their feelings, well, fine. If you think that it's okay, if you can feel however you feel about it, but this is not your life. This is mine. And so when you asked me earlier in our conversation about making that taking that leap of faith to relocate, that was a big deal because it was one of the first times that I made that decision, and I didn't really take I took my family into consideration, but ultimately I made the
I
decision.
got you.
It was one of those things, where I obviously I had to advise my wife of the decision, but
Yeah.
it was a decision that I made because I felt like it was the right decision for me, and I didn't feel a pressure about making the decision to appease somebody else. It was a life decision for me. There was nobody to answer to. It was me taking that leap of faith. It was me owning that.
Yeah.
Um, and so again to my younger self, just take risk. You
Hmm.
know, you know, don't worry about people pleasing. Don't worry about what other people think. Don't worry about falling short and making mistakes and feeling like you're going to be embarrassing or whatever. Just if God had put it on your heart to do, then you just do that thing and you just
Yeah.
trust and follow His lead. And again, the track, as we talked about earlier, the track record shows every time that I followed His lead,
Yes.
it's never ended in a bad outcome. Never.
Never. I
So if you think you've had multiple experiences of that, how many more do you have to have for the point to come across? Now, don't get me wrong. God will test you in the sense of He'll give you something that you be like, wait a minute now, I'm supposed to do all of that with just
yeah.
this little bit.
Yeah.
But again, you go back to the many stories in the Bible. You know, I'm sure a lot of folks was looking at him crazy when you get, the fish and the loaves of bread. How you gonna feed all these people? Well, did he
Yeah.
work out
And
with leftovers?
yes.
Well,
Yes.
well, if he did that and so many other things, then my little stuff would makes him think he
Uh,
can't pull that off. Like, why are we tripping?
yeah.
So
I
that's what
think
I would.
it just be the now, uh we have faith, but in that moment we lack faith, if you know what I
Hmm.
mean. Because I think we sometimes we want the results to happen right away.
We
You
do.
know, and it's His will, His way. Because once it goes His way at His will, it can't be unturned, and it is what it is, and it's even better than what we even thought. It really is. But I appreciate you sharing that. That's good. Okay, so we're coming to an end, but I want to give you an opportunity, to kind of tell us what you have plans for the future. If you have any upcoming events, any accomplishments in life, either personal or professional, that you would like to share with your listeners, because you've been doing great things with your podcast, and I am so proud of you. I remember the conversation when you first was talking about it, and you have a very supportive wife. And at this moment, we just want to lift you up and celebrate you. And you just tell us what your accomplishments are and any upcoming events that you have going on.
Well, I guess on the personal front, as I shared earlier, I just recently reached a milestone of 20 years in marriage.
Yes.
As of June 19th, and we had an opportunity to celebrate that. Of course, when we had our recent trip, we had a chance to go to Aruba
Awesome.
with the family and everything. So it was cool to just kind of to commemorate, and they acknowledge that, such a major accomplishment, especially as marriages that are struggling all the time to survive, even, even 1 year, no less talking about 20 years. So
Yes.
that was huge. Uh, on the professional front, again, of course, obviously I got the podcast going. We're in season 2.
You're awesome.
Um, yes, I'm an author. I'm in a season right now where I'm really trying uh, to tap into, okay, what's next.
Mhm.
As you shared, you were around when I first was going through the process of even moving forward with writing the book. You were one of the people I talked to about that. And we fast forward to the present, and the book is out.
Yes.
And then the podcast, was a follow up to the book. Something that I never imagined that I would do. We're actually coming up on the anniversary on August the 5th. Will be the 1 year
Wow.
anniversary of the podcast, and here we are,
Yes,
uh,
yes.
2 seasons in, and actually, the next episode that'll be airing will be the 150th episode.
Wow.
Um, so just the idea that I've had all of these interviews in such a short period of time, and the success so far of the podcast. But I know that even with the podcast, I'm already thinking, not only am I thinking beyond season 2, but I'm thinking, how can I level this up? Where does it go from here?
Mhm.
Because I do believe that there's more to it. I've been contemplating about what's going to be my next writing, and how I want to put that out there. Obviously, I have interest in doing some speaking opportunities. I do have an event coming up on July 27th.
Yes.
It's I think I shared that with you. It's called
Yes.
Candid Conversations for Men. So for anybody that has an opportunity to listen to this, whether it's ladies, you want to pass this information on to the men in your life, or fellas that get a chance to listen to this. It's a safe space opportunity for men to come together and the fellowship, and just to tap into just talking about issues that impact men, that we don't oftentimes have that safe space to talk in.
Mhm.
Again, it's food, fellowship, music, just a really good time. It's headed up by Dr. Kristen Guillory, that we, uh, you know, uh, that we oftentimes refer to as Dr. G, and it's going to be actually in Fort Worth. If you check out my either my personal Facebook page or my Blessings in the Streets Facebook page, you can see information regards to the posting that I have for that on how to register for it. It'll be in Fort Worth at TCU. A good time. I've done this before. I'll be one of the facilitators for that. But I've been to Candid Conversations multiple times, so it's an awesome experience. And for any man that gets a chance to do something like this, I promise you, you will thoroughly enjoy it. It'll definitely be worth your time. So that event will be from 1 to 5 on July 27th, which is a Saturday coming up. So that's in store. And like I said, I'm just looking at the big picture of the vision, because God has placed a vision on my heart. Um, you know that's surrounded about the whole blessings in the streets concept, and where I'm to go with it. And it's a big vision. I mean, it's way bigger than anything that I can do on my own. So it's time and season in my life where I'm trying to kind of focus and lock in on it a little bit more, in terms of what's the next step, what's the next direction to go with that. So I'm just asking God, to lead me accordingly, and I appreciate those who have been supportive along the way thus far, and I'm just excited for what He has in store for me. I got some major decisions to make, because I understand that when I really get fully active, in the way that this vision is directing me, it's going to be hard to balance doing this and the 9 to 5. And
Yes.
so, anytime you're contemplating that, especially after having such a long career and everything, it's hard. It's hard to make those decisions and make those moves. But again, it's about the mindset. It's about me, uh, just trying to hear God and say, Lord, How do you want me to move? And trusting that wherever way he tells me to move, even if it means go all in, you
Yeah.
know, am I willing to trust that? Am I willing to have faith and walk in obedience and doing what he's asking me to do, even if I can't see how it's all supposed to work out, but just
Yeah.
trusting in his promise that everything is going to work out, so those are the things that I'm kind of working through and walking through right now. And just, I'm excited for what lies ahead. And
Hmm.
just trying to each and every day, just trying to be a better version of myself. I'm not perfect. I don't have it all together. I got shortcomings and flaws just like everybody else, but I know the things that I need to work on and get better at, and I know the things that I'm doing well, and I need to keep on building on that. So
Yes.
I know what I'm dealing with. It's just more so, are you prepared to do what you need to do, eliminate the distractions,
Mhm.
and things of that nature? Because it can get challenging. There are days when you're not feeling, up to doing what you need to do, but I know it's necessary. And and I'm blocking out, things like, don't get concerned to my listeners, don't get concerned about,
What
thinking,
else?
is it too late to do, you know, it's not too late. God has worked in the lives of both men and women who have gotten up in age and done wonderful and magnificent things with them. So there's not an age cap to what God can do.
No,
There's
it's
not a,
not.
sometimes you get to staring at the bank account and you're thinking, I got to have more money to make this happen. And yeah, it may be true that you're going to need some money, but that doesn't mean that God is not opening up doors to allow you access to those financial resources or what have you. So, these are lessons that I have to learn, and these are lessons that I try to share, as I, am on my platforms like the podcast, etc., to kind of speak to people, to remind us, hey, God is a way maker. And I
Definitely.
know in the end he can make whatever needs to happen. He can connect you with whatever you need to be connected with. It's just, how much trust are you going to put in him? How much faith are you going to be put in him? And are you willing to walk in obedience, even if it just sounds like it's the craziest thing ever? Are you willing to just do it anyway because he said so? Not because of what man thinks, not because of what other people's opinions or thoughts are, because we oftentimes get caught up into that, and that slows us down. We get to comparing what we're doing with what other people are
Some,
doing and all that. Your
yeah,
lane is your lane, your pace is your pace, your purpose is your purpose. So that's kind of what I'm
yes.
trying to embrace right now, and as best as I can, and just thankful for God's patience, thankful for His grace, thankful for His mercies along the way. But just trying to get this thing right, and because I really do believe that, again, God has purposed me to do some great and magnificent works, that many can be blessed by and benefit from, that God can get the glory for. And in the midst of that, I think He's going to take care of me and my family along the way.
Of
And I
course,
just gotta trust in that and lock in on that. So that's where I'm at right now, just trying to pulling it all together and staying the course, and just, again, working on that focus, because the enemy is busy. Spiritual
he's
warfare is real.
very,
And in the season, and I've shared things obviously with you offline, Kim. You're very much aware of, certain season moments that I've gone through, particularly over the past few years. I'm in one of those cycles again,
yes,
but every time I go through one of these cycles of times where things are hitting you from all directions,
you come out
it's overwhelming, it's frustrating, you get beat down at times, but at the same time, I know God's track record. So I know anytime I'm going through like this, something's coming, and
yeah,
it's not a bad something, it's a good something.
big and
And
in
so
yes, absolutely, in a
yeah,
very big way. But yeah,
yeah,
I'm one of your biggest supporters, and you're doing a good thing, and you're doing great work. And your podcast and your book have blessed me. Listening to some of your guest testimonies and everything, they have truly blessed me. And I really appreciate in your walk have blessed me too. Our walk is our walk. However it is, it's not a certain way that we're supposed to walk. But as long as we walking with Christ, that's the best walk we could ever have. But if you don't have anything else, I would just like to say thank you for this opportunity to be your guest host tonight. Thank you for passing the mic to me so we could get a better insight of who Joseph Roberts is. And we appreciate you and we appreciate your work. And for the audience that's listening to this particular interview, please make sure you like, you share, and you subscribe. So at this moment, I'm signing off and I am passing the mic to Mr. Roberts to close us out. And thank you again for this opportunity to interview you. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kim, for being gracious enough to co-host with me today, or I should say, take over today. Because again, as I shared with you earlier, I know it's not easy
No,
to come on a podcast platform like this and be vulnerable and transparent. I thank God every day at the fact that He's allowed me to be a part of a platform where people have come on and felt that this was a safe space
yes,
to pour out, to share some things, some in some cases some painful things, some difficult things to talk about, but nevertheless feeling comfortable and understanding the big picture that it's about empowering and encouraging and uplifting other people in the sharing of our story. And I wanted to have that opportunity on my show, on my platform, to do the same thing. And I would do the same thing if I was on somebody else's platform, if they asked me to share, because I understand that there's power in our stories. And as I oftentimes say, I may never see your face. I may never know your name, but there are some stories that need to be told, whether it's mine, whether it's Kim's, whether it's others, that you needed to hear that story at that particular point in time. So we have to embrace the significance and the importance behind sharing our stories, because you just never know where people are in different points of their lives, and they just needed to hear that. They
exactly.
needed to know that it was real and that it was authentic and that it was transparent and that it was vulnerable, and that they're not the only ones that are going through what they go through, that everybody goes through storms. It's about how you respond to them.
Yes,
Do you let them smother you? Do you let them overtake you? Do you let them, to dominate your life? Or are you allowing yourself an opportunity to, and again, keyword opportunity,
yes,
transition those storms into and recognize them as opportunities, change the mindset and understand this is an opportunity for me to grow and to develop, and that storm can't come my way unless God says so, that it's okay to come my way. And if He's allowing it to come my way, then you can trust and believe that there's something good in the storm. And
yes,
that's something that I've had to learn for myself. And then I would encourage my listeners to do the same, is don't look at these storms as bad happenings in your life. They don't always feel good. I get that. They don't always come at the most convenient times for our lives, but nothing God does is imperfect. Nothing He does is off track. It's precise. It's accurate. It's on point. With the specific details, the specific format, and everything else that goes along with it. He doesn't make a mistake, and
no,
so the more you get into embracing that and understanding that, the better off you'll be in how to handle the storms and thanking God for them, because you're going to win if you have that faith, and if you walk in obedience through that storm and stay connected to Him. He will be with you throughout that whole entire process. And when you come up out of that thing, still standing upright, stronger, better, and wiser than what you were before the storm even began, He's going to be right there for you to give Him all the glory, all the honor, and all the praise as He's deserving of in that. And so yeah, so it's just an awesome time to be in relationship with God right now, and a necessary time. I mean,
very
just with
necessary.
everything that's going on in the world right now, if you don't even have to have the TV on, or read a news article or anything like that for very long, to understand that we are in some dark times right now.
Yes.
And again, that spiritual warfare is real.
It
It's
very,
hitting us in every aspect of our lives, our churches, and everything else. So we got to be on point. And so if you don't have a relationship with God, today is a mighty fine day for you to make that decision, and I guarantee you it'll be the best one that you ever make. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and close this out. And just remember, here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and thanks again to my co-host, Kim Davis, for being in the house with me, taking over my mic this evening and letting me run my mouth a little bit. My apologies if I got a little long-winded, but I don't get a chance to talk very much on this side of the table. So, but hopefully you got something out of what I had to share tonight, that you were blessed, that that there's some nugget that you can take away that apply to your lives in dealing with adversity and the challenging times of life, because we all deal with them, but we also have a God that loves us unconditionally and wants nothing but the best for us. And the more we lean on him and trust in him and believe in him to make ways out of no way, we will not be disappointed. So until
Amen.
next time, you take care of yourselves. Have a great rest of your evening, and I look forward to seeing you again. Have a great day.